Hello, everyone. Today we're going to go through the Pearson Unit 4 Leadership and Management. And in today's learning outcome, we're going to examine how leadership and management theories and principles and their impact on the effectiveness of an organization. So we have many slides that we're going to go through today. I'm going to, in short, explain the different theories because not every theory is, going to be used in a specific business model. It changes from time to time. Obviously, do let me know if you guys have any questions or doubts, and then I'll stop and answer them. As a quick question to the group, does anyone know what leadership and management is? All right, so I will explain what leadership and management is. When I think about leadership, in my head, it comes up the ability to influence, motivate, and essentially just help or enable others or give them the opportunities for them to contribute in the organization's success. So what does a good leadership or leadership management does, all right? That leader essentially gives, its colleagues or its employees or people under them the resources essentially so that they can give their best and perform in the best way possible. Sorry about that. Just give me 1 second. Sorry about that. So yeah, that is what a good leader or a good leadership team would do, right? Whereas management is, to control basically a group of people so that they can be motivated or be pushed towards a specified outcome. So how your management team pushes associates or pushes employees so that they can do better, they can perform better, they have all of the resources to perform better. So that is what leadership and management would mean. So this sheet just explains again the definition of management, which explains that, what managers do, how they are important in the team, and, they look at planning, decision-making, so many issues that come up with management because, some managers should have these key skills so that they can essentially perform better or motivate their associates into doing better. Whereas there are different theories of management as well. We are going to go through some quick theories today in this presentation. And we're going to be talking about modern management theories as well, because since the 20th century, there are so many modern theories that have come up. The transformational, the transactional, different, the theories. We're going to be talking about a few of them in these slides later on. Whereas again, coming on to leadership, what I explained what leadership is having, the ability to basically influence, motivate, direct others, or enable them essentially to contribute to the organization's success. So leadership theory is one of the theories that we'll also be discussing about, where we're going to explain how, leaders are so important in the organization. So if I start with explaining what the classical management theory is. So the classical management theory, essentially what it does is it focuses on, the hierarchy essentially. So what is the hierarchy? It focuses on, for example, from an associate, there is someone managing the associate. That manager has been managed by another manager. That is the hierarchy of the business. So they focus on that hierarchy and also focus on specializing the tasks and how those tasks or getting those tasks done will be financially incentives basically for the employees. So this type of management theory only focuses on essentially getting the job done. They don't have job satisfaction into account. They just are looking at getting the job done, how to increase productivity, how to increase efficiency in the organization. And they clearly explain or have clear expectations from their associates in terms of what they want from them and what their output should be so that they can in turn maximize profits in the organization. So this is what classical management theory means. Now, quickly again explaining about leadership and management. So for many reasons, it shows that, what makes a good leader or a good manager? So there are so many reasons that come up into place, right? So in my head, when I say, what a good leader is or who a good leader is someone who has the ability to create, different visions and also look at the future, keep that in mind. Someone who can be calm under pressure and, has good communication skills, can motivate others, can push the entire team into doing better, right? Whereas looking at different management and leadership skills is a very, I would say, every manager deals with their employees in a different way. So if you're looking at management and leadership skills in different organizations, they might vary because every organization has their own way of managing people and managing their associates into pushing better and doing better. Every organization might have a new way of motivating associates so that they can perform better. For example, I worked for an organization and we were working during lockdown, and during lockdown, everyone was quite detached from their work. They weren't very motivated into getting tasks done. So our company came up with this little idea called these points that we used to assign. So if I felt that my colleague did a good job, I could assign some points to them. And that points used to go on a little board wherein, X person received these many points. And everyone in the company knew. And also with those points, they could buy monetary things like, gift vouchers. They had, different products, perfumes, luxury perfumes, Apple Watch, all of these things. So every organization had their own set of way in motivating associates. Some did a group calls on Teams, did little workshops. So that is how they motivated their associates into doing better. So it varies from company to company, essentially. So this again shows that there are different ways in which you also have performance management that happens. So it basically includes different goal settings and objectives set for their associates. And obviously they have a conversation with them. They gather all of the information and data and talk about their performance. So that is how Robert essentially started the process of performance management. Now, this little picture shows, different theories. And from these different theories, we're going to be talking about a few theories today, actually. We're going to be talking about the Magor theory. We have Taylor's theory of scientific management. We have a few more theories from here, which I'm going to be explaining to you guys. So, McGregor's theory of management, basically, this slide shows it in short. Later on in this presentation, we're going to be explaining it in depth as well. But just to quickly explain it to you, what it essentially means. So according to him, he divided it into two theories, which is theory X and theory Y. Yeah. Theory X basically assumed that people or associates were a little lazy and they were not motivated into doing well. So they were supposed to be managed or pushed in a certain way by their managers to do better, so they will have to be monitored by the management essentially. Whereas theory Y, those people were very motivated. They wanted to do and get job done. Their managers did not have to keep a check on them every time. And their jobs essentially were satisfying them. That's why they were so motivated into doing that. That's how he broke his theory into theory X and Y. And why did he do that? Because that's how we can manage associates. So then we have two sets of associates, one who are not that focused on the job, but as one who they are on the job, they want to be, getting more stuff done. They're very motivated. So management does not have to spend more time onto theory Y people, whereas they have to push theory X people more. So that's how he broke his theory into two parts and two sets of people as well, and how it's easier for managers to manage, people who are motivated versus people who are not that motivated. So again, theory Y corresponds to the scientific management view of workers. So also it depends on what style of working they use, which is really important. So there are different aspects that come into place as well. So I'm going to explain the theory in depth later on as well in these slides. Now, there are different leadership styles that, we have been talking about. So there is transformational leadership, there is transactional leadership, situational, laissez-faire, and there's action-centered leadership, all right? When I think about leadership, again, as I previously explained, what leadership means, it is the ability to influence or motivate, people, or direct and push them towards contributing more in the organization or contributing more towards organization success so that they can put in their 100% and give their best. So I'm going to explain transformational leadership first and then transactional. These slides just explain it in depth in like what these different leadership styles are. So for transformational leadership, essentially it is that these leaders have a vision in mind, and they also are able to motivate the others in their team. So they have this character inside of them, of leadership that basically has a purpose to do work, or, gives others, motivation that, what, they're actually working or running towards a specific purpose. That's why they're doing this job, and that's why they need to do that job better. So that's how people choose to follow these set of leaders, because they're so motivated into doing stuff, and they also push others. So those are transformational leaderships, or transformational leaders, essentially, that inspire others into pushing themselves and doing better. Whereas transactional leaders are essentially, or transactional leadership style is a leadership style that they mainly focus on, more of a trade, I would say. For example, if you do proper, if you do a good job, and if you have the skills to do the job, then you will essentially give the desired outcome. Yeah. So if you do the job properly, you are going to be rewarded essentially properly for it. So they focus on how skills are exchanged, how resources are exchanged between themselves and their subordinates, instead of just focusing on, motivating them. They tell them that, all right, you have the skills to do this job. If you do this job, you will be rewarded correctly. So that's how they motivate people, essentially with reward, I would say. Now, we're going to be talking about, all right, so again, contingency theories. So there are different contingency theories. Later on, we're going to be talking about contingency theory as well. But in short, what is the contingency theory of leadership? I would say is that there is no one single best leadership style. Okay. So one particular leadership style cannot be used in, in a business or in a job role. Like that cannot work, because there is not a single best style, whereas whatever can be effectively applied to that particular business. And there are various factors that you need to keep in mind for you to apply that specialized leadership style. So you need to keep that in mind and then apply it. So that essentially means that that is what contingency theory means, that there's no best way to lead the organization, but instead you need to be a proper leader to see what works best for your business and then put on the leadership style that's needed. Now we're going to be talking about the laissez-faire leadership style. So laissez-faire, essentially, what these kind of leaders do, that they allow their subordinates or their followers basically to have the autonomy to make their own decisions. So such leaders let their subordinates, make their own decisions and leave them alone. So that's why it says leave alone attitude. So they are in charge of their daily day-to-day decisions. They are in charge of their own tasks, and they manage themselves. Obviously, they let the leaders know what they're working on, but essentially they have autonomy to make their own decisions. And obviously they give, such leaders would be there for their team to support them, to give them training if it's required, to guide and consult them. But they would essentially trust their associates to deal with all of the tasks that have been assigned and make sure that they do their task correctly, because they aren't pushing them to do everything. Their associates already know what they have to do. So that is what this type of leadership means. So this is just a picture, an image that explains what situational leadership means. Situational leadership essentially is how these leaders in different situations help their associates. So when they're instructing them, that's when the focus is starting to get high. Whereas when those associates are participating or coaching, basically, when the leaders are when their associates are participating or getting coached, that's when the role of the leaders are really high. That's why the arrow is up. Whereas once they start delegating the work or giving them tasks to do, that's when the leaders start pushing away and let their associates do the job. So this is basically a version of situation leadership. Over here, they talk about the different types of leadership again, which is autocratic, paternalistic, and democratic. Sorry, I was just drinking some water. So over here, what it says is, in autocratic, the senior management makes all of the decisions, and they don't ask their associates or subordinates for any input, all right, which essentially results in, a quick decision making, because it's only senior managers who are making that decision. And in a disadvantage, there is no communication, okay, which can be a little demotivating, because when I've been asked to do a certain task, I would like to know why I have to do that task, or my input, if they take my input in, I would appreciate that. So that's why. Whereas paternalistic, the decisions are made by the managers, but obviously they keep the best interest of the workers in mind and consult them. So in an advantage, obviously there's a two-way communication, which helps, but it essentially slows down decision making, because they take many people's opinion in mind and they have so many things in the background before they make one little decision. For democratic, the workers make their own decision. All right. So when they have given the authority to the workers to make their own decision, it can be very motivating for the workers, because they want to push to do better. They want to show their managers or their leaders that, they're really good at their tasks. They're good at doing their job. So that can be motivating. But on a disadvantage side, there can be more mistakes and errors that can be made, because not all workers are skilled or equipped enough to do the tasks that they want to push themselves to do. Sometimes they do need a leadership guidance for them to do that task. So that's why. Just checking. Yeah, that's why it would come up as a disadvantage later on. Now moving on to the other slides. This just explains what strategic leadership is. So strategic leadership essentially means that these leaders keep or think ahead before making any decision. So they think for the future in advance. So they have the ability to prepare and anticipate for the future. And, they have some signs that they keep that in mind, they're looking at the next 5 years when they make any decision, for example, or next 3 years when they make any decision. So such kind of leaders, there are few strategies that they put into place, and that's when they use this kind of leadership essentially. And these are just a few qualities that can be in a good leader, inspirational. Then they are good interpersonal skills, ability to solve problems, good timing, ability to plan, and, opportunistic abilities essentially. This talks about Mintzberg's skills to a good manager. Again, just going to quickly glimpse through this, as it just talks about how Mintzberg identified that there are few skills, or basically 10 skills, that every manager should have, so that if they put them into categories, then it makes it easier to know if that's a good leader or not. So they have interpersonal skills, informational skills, and decisional skills. So obviously there are the skills that are listed down over here for being a good manager essentially. Now talking about hard and soft HR. So what is a soft HR approach? I would say that soft HR basically focuses on the human side of things and how it can prioritize people and the people's need to basically actualize their potential and also find meaning in their job. So how we can motivate people by a soft HR approach to basically like their job, be more effective in their job, and also give proper rewards to their associates so that they are satisfied with their job. Whereas a hard HR approach is, I would say, it is more cost effective because it's very, it's a very task focused approach instead of a people focused approach. You've been assigned task. It doesn't recognize what individuals need. Instead, it just recognize that, all right, these are the tasks that needs to be completed. We just need to push the individuals to getting these tasks done. So that is hard versus soft HR approaches. Now I'm going to quickly explain the scientific management theory. So what does anyone what is the scientific management theory, all right? So the scientific management theory was essentially started by Taylor, all right? So he started the scientific management theory, all right? This theory essentially looks at improving the efficiency of the workforce, all right? At the end, if I talk in simple language, it just looks at improving how the workforce can do better. That's what the theory looks at. But it also looks at analyzing these workforce and synthesizing them. So basically, to improve economic efficiency and also labor productivity, there are different ways or different changes that can be made toward the workflow to improve that. So sorry about that. So in the Taylor's management theory, basically, there are 4 different parts, and I will explain those 4 parts later on in these slides, just 2 slides later. But essentially, what they're looking at is looking at improving the efficiency of the workforce so that the best output can come up. Now, talking about the job specialization, all right? So again, job specialization, or we can also call it the division of labor, was by Adam Smith. What he did was he sees that when workers learn how to perform specific tasks very well, that's when they specialize in one specific task, all right? So for example, if it's a production place and someone specializes in putting the stickers on the labels, yeah, or label stickers, whereas someone specializes in packing the box in the first place, all right? When workers specialize in specified tasks, that's when they specialize in a specific job role. And that's how they get efficient in that job role. For example, I'm very good at sticking stickers. So my efficiency in that is probably, 40 stickers in an hour. All right. Whereas someone else, if they try to do it, their efficiency would be 30 stickers in an hour. So that's how I have specialized into sticking stickers. That's my specialization. And he felt that if each worker is skilled at one specific task, it improves efficiency. It improves efficiency essentially. And also is more productive. So in a factory, basically, there's more productivity if specialized workers come in and work on specific tasks. So that also helps in division of labor. Now, again, we were talking about the scientific management or Taylor's scientific management. So essentially, I was telling you how there are 4 different principles to the scientific management theory. So it starts with how scientific methods are used to discover the most efficient way to perform a task. So there might be different ways into completing a task. For example, in a factory, there might be a way that we can stick the label first, then do the packing, or we can do the packing first, then stick the label. So in this theory, what they do is they identify the best way in which we can perform that task so that it is time efficient and also more productive. So obviously, first thing they discover, how the task is performed or how the job is performed and new ways that we can do it so that we can come up with the most productive way of doing it. Then they have clear vision of responsibilities given to each of the workers so they know what they need to do. Then it's a performance-based pay. If they perform better, that's when they will be paid better. So better performance, better pay. And also they have to follow all the hierarchy and, has properly looked after the workers, they're surveillanced basically. So these are the 4 ways in which the principle of scientific management is put into place. Now, there are different problems that come up with scientific management theory as well, in terms of, just to increase productivity, but they don't change the working, so for example, if I am working on sticking labels for like, I'd say the last 2 years, after a point, I might underperform because I am done with my task, or I'm actually, it's getting very boring and dull to do the same task every single day. So I might like to switch it up. So sometimes it might help if you put me in a different place in terms of packing so that I have some experience with that as well. And slowly, steadily, I improve my performance in the packing part of the business as well. So this can be one of the problems that can come up with. And, since they're doing the same kind of work every day, it leads to monotony. So it gets very dull and boring. That's why sometimes these problems can arise in scientific management theory. Now, the Gilberts. If I explain you what the Gilberts did, I would, in a very simple, layman language, is they essentially took the scientific management theory, all right, and they made certain improvements to it. So they developed that theory, and also they basically analyzed the timings of things and how it worked. So they broke it down into time and motion studies. Yeah. So they not just broke the action into each component. So basically, for example, in packing, if a person took 5 minutes to pack a box, yeah, they looked at each way in which they folded the paper, they looked at each way in which they stuck the sellotape to pack it, and they broke down that task into more components of action. All right. And why did they do that? They did that so that they can find better ways of performing it. So basically, they felt that, you are making 4 folds on each side. Instead, we can just make 2 big folds and finish the packing quicker. So that's how they found better ways to perform it. And also how each action can be more efficient. So they analyzed the mechanics and the timings of specified tasks, and that's how they did that. Oops. Yeah. So this is one of the things why the Gilberts changed, I would say, or made a little different in Taylor's scientific management theory. Now coming on to administrative management, all right? So administrative management essentially is the process of managing information through people, I would say. So, they basically, what they do is, while distributing information in the business, they want to create efficiency and effectiveness, all right? So to do that, what Max Weber did essentially, he said that since there are many large number of roles within the business, all right, what they do is they're going to be creating the ways in which it can be efficiently and effectively led. So they came up with bureaucratic principles, all right? So what are bureaucratic principles? So according to Max Weber, basically, the main principles of bureaucracy were they specialized the work and also created division of labor. So basically, people were more competence for job appointments, standard procedures, formal written records. They had all of that. So basically, a bureaucracy should have, sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, it should have a set of written rules. So workers know what they need to follow and how they need to follow it. So those rules are already given. They also have a system of relationship in terms of task relationship, who has to do what and who has to report to whom, and how their task would be rewarded as well. So that workers knew in advance that how they are going to be paid, and if they do the task in terms of doing it as per the requirements, that's how they'll be paid, right? And also they knew in terms of if they had to approach someone, if they had a doubt or they had questions for someone, who they had to approach. And, the authority, the hierarchy was already mentioned in those principles. So that's how this helped. So this is basically administrative management, wherein to increase efficiency and effectiveness, they create an organization wherein everything is already mentioned in the start. So people don't need to run about that, who I need to find if there's something going wrong. They already have everything given over there. Now, there are a few points of bureaucracy, which is firstly authority. So, because it's specified in these tasks that, all right, for example, Archie is in charge of sticking stickers, like I gave the example before. So if something goes wrong with sticking stickers, or if the performance is not up to the mark, then they know whom to be held responsible, essentially me. I will be held responsible for not doing that task, right? And also position duties are clearly identified. Everyone knows what they expect out of them. Lines of authority are clearly identified. They have proper standing operating procedures and rules that they use in the firm. So that's why it's, it makes things very easier, wherein into finding who's, if something's going wrong with a special task, they know who or why that thing is going wrong. And they also know whom to, essentially, I don't want to use the word catch, but whom to be held responsible in case that task doesn't go well or is not done properly. So yeah. Now we're going to move on to Fowler's principles. So Henry Fowler basically had different sets of principles that he developed. So there were 14 principles he worked on. And what these 14 principles emphasize on essentially are the organizational structure, I would say. And they essentially emphasize on the importance of, a clearly defined structure within the team and organization. So very similar to the bureaucracy points, but again, over here, he divides them into 14 kinds of ways or principles, so that everyone is, essentially aware of the role that they're doing, how important they are to the team, and, how they can contribute more to the team and towards their goals, and how much authority do they have in their team, all right? So he breaks it down into, division of labor, which also helps in job specialization. Then authority and responsibility. Everyone knows what they have to do. Then also into the unity of command, wherein who they need to report to. They know the line of authority, centralization. Unity of direction, wherein they have an action plan in hand and how they need to follow that. Equity, wherein they treat all of their associates equal and, respectfully. They treat all of their employees fairly, so that no one is treated more or less differently. They're treated the same, essentially. So that's a very big thing in Fowler's principle. And, the order in which they need to perform, the initiative that they need to have, how disciplined they need to be, wherein, all these tasks are laid out, how they need to do the task, they need to silently do it, and how much time they need to do it. That's how discipline comes into place. And how they're going to be properly remunerated. So they are aware that if they do their task up to the job and, they do everything and complete things properly, they are obviously going to be properly remunerated for the same. They are given stability of tenure, wherein they are mentioned if you perform well, then obviously they're going to be with that company for a longer time, which is an incentive for some associates. Then interest over individual interest. So, They look at a general overall interest instead of looking at per person's interest and how they feel. So yeah, and just espere D Corps, wherein everyone should have devotion towards the organization and have a sense of enthusiasm towards doing their job, essentially. So these are few of Fowler's principles, which he came up with, 14 to be precise. And yeah. Now I'm going to move on to the behavioral management. So what does behavior management does, all right? So behavior management is essentially a process of supporting associates so that they can make positive choices in the business, or how the manager can motivate their associates so that they can be pushed into doing better. That comes as a part of behavioral management. So what an influential leader would do is they would suggest their workers that, there is room of improvement, how they can do their job the best way, how they should have all of the knowledge and how they can control the tasks. So a good leader would essentially have those skills. So that is part of behavioral management, essentially. And I would say that behavioral management is basically just pushing them into making correct choices for themselves. So it's more focused on how the leaders interact with their associates instead of just, leaders being focused on them working better or doing their job better. Now, the Hathron studies, or the Hathron effect, as we call it. So what they did was they tested different variables, all right? They tested the effect of lighting, the effect of pay incentives, the effect of work breaks on associates, and how that would essentially affect the productivity in the organization. So, I skipped a few things. Yeah. So it essentially explained that workers' productivity was measured in various levels of light illumination, all right? And they also were given, different, whether the light levels were raised or lowered, how productivity rose. So not just light, but they also used, work breaks, how giving workers breaks every 3 hours was helpful, and pay incentives. So basically, if someone was told that if you did the job or if the finishing of this product was really good, you would get an extra, I don't know, 20p on per product, all right? So how that affected workers, all of that was basically studied in the Hathron effect, or the Hathron studies. Now we are back to theory X and Y. We spoke about these theories in the beginning of this presentation. So again, 2 sets of workers. Theory X workers are lazy, whereas theory Y workers are very motivated and not lazy. All right. So McGregor basically divided them into 2 sets of people working here. Theory X workers require someone to, closely supervise them and control them, through proper reward and punishment. Whereas theory X workers, since they were very motivated into doing their job, the managers essentially should allow the workers some, give them a little space to breathe. Don't sit on their head. It was divided like that because obviously they need to give more attention to theory X workers. They said that in a theory X, the employee is lazy, whereas theory Y, the employee is not lazy. And over here, managers need to properly supervise them and create strict rules and, define proper rewards that, if you do this task only, then you'll be rewarded. Otherwise, you wouldn't be rewarded. Just an example. Whereas theory Y, employee is not lazy, and managers basically create work setting to build initiative so that they're more, more eager to get more tasks done than they already are. And also this helps to give the workers authority. So if they have authority, they feel like, they are heard in the business. So they would want to push to do better and more. And their commitment to the business also increases. So that was about theory X and theory Y. Now, William came up with theory Z, all right? What he did was he explained that theory Z is a blend of Eastern and Western management philosophies, all right? So he took some philosophies, basically how the theory X model was followed from the US, whereas he also went to the Japanese culture and took some, work culture outputs from them as well, and how the workers are committed to work over there and how they behave differently than the US workers. So it basically combines, in my head, I would say it combines theory X and Y workers, because it explains that, this theory essentially explains that how a blend of both can be required, because you can't just use one theory or one model for, managing your people. We always, every company has a mix of people. Some people are really motivated, whereas some are a little less motivated into getting their tasks done. So they need to follow all of the different elements in order to create a productive and loyal working environment. So it has to be a mix and blend of many things. So that's how theory Z came into picture. Now I'm just going to explain what management science is. Management science essentially is different techniques that are used to essentially just improve or maximize the resources that we already have. So they obviously, how scientific management theory uses bits of science to, streamline the process, the tasks. What they use is problem solving and decision making in an organization. So how different ways in which you can think, or different problem solving ways that you can think of, that you can apply it to the scientific method of management, so that when managers make decisions in an organization, it also in turns improves the performance of their associates. All right. So it's quantitative techniques to maximize resources in the end. So they use quantitative management, operations management, total quantity management, which basically focuses essentially at the end product, essentially, because it looks at the quality of the products, and management of information system, wherein you're getting information about the organization. So it's pushing or motivating their associates, since they are aware of what's happening in the organization. They are motivated into doing better. Then organization environment theory. In this theory, what they consider is they consider relationships inside as well as the outside of the organization, wherein the environment that affects the organization, they even look at that. And what they emphasize on is not just resources available within their environment, but also external environment, and how, for example, what the stakeholder wants, how that affects, or the stakeholder demands affects their decision-making skills as well, and how it has implications on organizational performance. So there are different relationships inside and outside the organization, because of which the managers need to make specified decisions as well. So how these decisions keep changing because of external theory or external relationships that happen, even that is taken into picture in the organization and environment theory. So now systems theory is also, systems theory considers the impact of the stages, I would say. So system theory, what it does is each system it sees as a whole, and how the benefits are, it basically, wait, let me explain it to you in a very simple layman language. So it considered that each system is as a whole. So each process that's happening, for example, in a warehouse, each process is considered as a whole, and how that one whole process helps or benefits the output in total. And then how this one little system, adding on to the different systems that are happening, comes up with the end product. This is what system theory looks at. So it looks at the input, the conversion, basically, how the processed goods or services are getting ready, and at the finished goods as well. So an open system interacts with an environment, whereas a closed system is self-contained. So they look at how, since there are different systems that are add up to come up with the finished products, they look at how the systems can be integrated. So synergy, basically. Whereas if two systems are integrated or coordinated together, how it can help in the output, or how it can help in, say, time management, or getting work done better. So they talk about how in the input stage, the raw materials are put in, then the conversion stage, the skills are put in, then the output stage, which is the goods and services are getting ready, and then how the sales can happen. So this is the entire system that they're looking at. Now, we already spoke about contingency theory, essentially meaning that there is no one best way to manage people or manage, a specialized business. It keeps changing. There are so many changes, external changes that are happening, technological changes that are happening. So we need to keep changing. This again talks about theory X and Y. We have covered this. And this is just some recommended reading. So I hope that today's lecture was quite clear to everyone. If you have any doubts, please feel free to just send me an email out and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you so much for seeing today's lecture. Take care, guys. Bye.